Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I'll be walking you through a detailed case study on the Colonial pipeline ransomware attack that occurred in May of 2021. This event stands as one of the most consequential cyber incidents in American history, not just for its scale and disruption, but because of what it revealed about our collective vulnerabilities in the realm of critical infrastructure. This was not simply a cyber crime. This incident made national headlines and served as a major wake-up call for cybersecurity professionals, policymakers, and private companies alike. A single password, leaked in an old data dump and never retired, granted hackers access to a system that distributes nearly half the fuel consumed on the U.S. East Coast. It's a powerful example of how cyber threats are no longer limited to data breaches or financial loss. They can also disrupt our physical infrastructure and impact millions of people. Throughout this presentation, we'll explore how this breach happened, what tools were used, who was behind it, and what lessons the industry and the government have learned since then. Before we dive into the details, here's a quick roadmap for today's presentation. First, I'll provide a snapshot of the attack itself, who it targeted, and what the immediate impact was. Then we'll go through a timeline of key events to understand how the breach unfolded in real time. Next, we'll dissect the methods the attackers used to gain entry and maintain control, including their use of various tools and techniques. We'll also talk about the threat actors involved, particularly the dark side group, and what motivated them. We'll follow with a deep dive into the consequences of the breach, both immediate and long-term, and how policy at the national level responded. Finally, I'll present the lessons learned from this event and offer some key takeaways that apply broadly across industries, not just in energy, but any sector with critical digital infrastructure. My goal is to not only inform you of what happened, but help you understand why it matters for the future of cybersecurity. Let's start with the basics. Colonial Pipeline Company operates the largest refined oil pipeline in the United States. This pipeline spans over 5,500 miles and moves gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, and other refined petroleum products from the Gulf Coast up to New Jersey. It supplies about 45% of the fuel consumed on the East Coast. It is considered a critical infrastructure provider, meaning its disruption can have far-reaching societal impacts. In May 2021, the company fell victim to a ransomware attack that would become historic in scale, forcing Colonial to shut down their entire operation to prevent further damage, leading to a 6-day disruption, the longest in the company's history. The attackers stole approximately 100 gigabytes of sensitive data, encrypted Colonial's key IT systems, and shut down their billing system, effectively paralyzing the company's ability to manage fuel distribution. The motive was simple: financial gain. This was not an act of sabotage or political protest. It was a calculated business decision by a group that viewed critical infrastructure not as sacred, but as highly profitable leverage. The attack unfolded over several days, starting on May 7th and ending on the 13th when systems began to be restored. Colonial was likely targeted due to its operational importance. Disrupting fuel supply creates immediate pressure to pay the ransom, and because it lacked certain modern security protections, making it an attractive, high-value target for financially motivated attackers. This incident highlighted how critical infrastructure can become a leverage point for cybercriminals seeking maximum impact. Now let's talk about how the attackers actually got in. One of the key factors in this breach was an unused VPN account that had never been deactivated. The credentials for this account had been compromised in a separate, unrelated data breach and were later discovered in a publicly accessible collection of leaked passwords on the dark web. Worse still, Colonial Pipeline had not implemented multi-factor authentication for that account, or for many of their systems. That means just a single username and password combination provided attackers with unrestricted access to a critical part of the network. Once inside, they took advantage of remote access protocols that were not being closely monitored. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Colonial, like many companies, expanded its remote access capabilities. Unfortunately, This expansion wasn't accompanied by a matching increase in monitoring or security controls. There were no alerts about unusual activities like privilege escalation or lateral movement. Remote access points became the perfect vector for compromise, and because endpoint behavior analytics were minimal, the attackers were able to operate undetected inside the system for days. This shows how one weak link, a single login, can lead to catastrophic consequences. Once the attackers gained initial access, they deployed a customized variant of the dark side ransomware, a modular ransomware which is known for its sophistication and ability to encrypt large portions of a system quickly while also stealing data for use in double extortion schemes where victims are threatened with both data encryption and public leaks. In other words, the attackers didn't just lock up data, they also stole it and threatened to publish it online if their ransom demands were not met. Their technical toolkit was extensive. They used a sophisticated combination of tools to explore and expand their access within the network. They leveraged PowerShell, a legitimate Windows tool, to execute automation commands and scripts silently, blending in with normal administrative tasks. Then, they introduced Cobalt Strike, a penetration testing tool misused by attackers, which allowed them to simulate beaconing to create backdoors to a command and control server, effectively giving them live control over infected machines. Another common tool was Mimikatz, which extracts plain text passwords, hashes, pins, and Kerberos tickets from memory, allowing them to escalate privileges and gain access to high-value systems and admin credentials, and move laterally through the network, shifting from the initial point of entry to other systems. Once inside, they conducted reconnaissance to map out the network. They located critical servers, staged data for exfiltration, and set up persistence mechanisms to maintain access over time. They also employed anti-forensics tactics to cover their tracks, making it more difficult for incident responders to understand what had happened. They were careful to avoid detection by disabling logging services, clearing event logs, and using legitimate tools to minimize red flags, a practice known as living off the land. In addition, they likely exfiltrated data before encryption to use it as leverage, which is part of the growing trend of double extortion. All of this happened while evading detection by using fileless techniques and blending in with normal network traffic. These methods reflect a high level of planning and skill, consistent with other ransomware as a service groups, and demonstrate how attackers can exploit both technical and human vulnerabilities to maximize damage. So why was this attack so successful? Let's talk about the underlying flaws. Colonial Pipeline's security posture had multiple weaknesses. First, authentication weaknesses were central. The VPN account should have had multi-factor authentication, an increasingly common and necessary safeguard, but it didn't. The VPN infrastructure was outdated and lacked modern security controls. The credentials weren't rotated or retired when the account fell out of use. Second, Colonial's network architecture lacked segmentation. Their IT and OT, operational technology networks, weren't sufficiently separated, so once the attackers gained access, they encountered a flat network, meaning there were few internal barriers, and they could move laterally with ease. Third, the company was using outdated infrastructure, including legacy VPNs and systems that lacked modern security features like endpoint detection and response, EDR, or security information and event management, SIM, platforms for intrusion detection, behavioral analytics, centralized logging, and alerting. Finally, their monitoring capabilities were inadequate. These gaps gave the attackers time and space to prepare their payload. It's a reminder that even large organizations can overlook basic but essential layers of cybersecurity. The group responsible for the attack was DarkSide, a known ransomware syndicate that operates on a ransomware as a service model. This means they develop the ransomware, then lease it out to affiliates who carry out the actual attacks. The profits are split between the developer and the affiliate, creating a scalable and decentralized criminal enterprise. DarkSide was known for issuing press releases and presenting itself as a professional business rather than a traditional criminal group, even maintaining a public-facing website on the dark web to communicate with victims. DarkSide's code was designed to avoid Russian language systems, and their operations relied heavily on infrastructure based in Eastern Europe. While they claimed to be apolitical and motivated solely by money, the fact that they intentionally avoided attacking targets in Russia or other CIS countries strongly suggests a regional affiliation, often associated with sophisticated cybercrime due to lax enforcement and technical talent. They claimed the Colonial attack was carried out by an affiliate and not approved by their leadership, possibly to deflect blame amid intense global scrutiny. After facing significant attention from law enforcement, DarkSide reportedly shut down operations, stating their goal was financial, not social disruption, though similar groups often rebrand and resurface under new names, highlighting the challenge of combating such fluid networks. The group even published a bizarre statement after the Colonial attack, apologizing for the chaos and saying they only intended to make money, not disrupt society. This kind of PR statement is rare and underscores how much attention this attack drew. This shows how cybercrime has evolved into a highly organized, profit-driven industry with global reach, making attribution and prosecution incredibly complex. Regardless of intent, the results had serious national and international effects. On May 7th, the attack was discovered. Pipeline operations were shut down immediately. The shutdown caused a cascade of issues, reminiscent of a hurricane or blizzard warning. Within days, fuel shortages began appearing across 17 states. Gas prices surged by as much as 25%, particularly in the southeastern U.S. Panic buying emptied gas stations. News channels showed long lines at gas stations, and there were reports of people filling plastic bags and bins with fuel, leading to even more chaos. Airlines experienced delays due to jet fuel shortages. By May 11th, some airlines were rerouting flights simply to access fuel. Supply chains for goods like groceries and medical supplies were also affected. This wasn't just a cybersecurity story. It became a national news event and a public crisis. The psychological impact, fear, and urgency was just as damaging as the actual service outage. The attackers demanded $4.4 million in Bitcoin. Colonial pipeline executives, faced with the urgent need to restore service, made the controversial decision to pay the ransom, though the FBI later recovered a portion by tracking the digital wallet. Pipeline operations resumed gradually over May 12th and 13th, but the supply chain did not recover overnight. The damage lingered for weeks, highlighting how fragile our infrastructure can be when attacked in the right or wrong places. The federal government moved quickly to address the crisis. On May 9th, the White House issued a regional emergency declaration, suspending certain transportation regulations to get fuel moving, allowing alternative methods like trucking to alleviate shortages. Just 5 days later, on May 12, 2021, President Biden signed an executive order aimed at improving and modernizing national cybersecurity, a direct response to the attack's severity. It mandated adopting zero-trust architectures, which assumes no user or device is inherently trustworthy, as well as enhancing incident reporting, endpoint detection, and securing software supply chains to prevent similar exploits. By May 27th, the Department of Homeland Security and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, followed up with new cybersecurity requirements for pipeline operators. These included the need to report cyber incidents, perform vulnerability assessments, implement contingency planning, and the appointment of dedicated cybersecurity coordinators. Then in June, the Department of Justice announced it had recovered $2.3 million of the ransom using blockchain tracing techniques. The DOJ also stood up a new ransomware task force focused on public-private cooperation and international law enforcement coordination. The attack became a case study in how public and private sectors must collaborate to defend critical infrastructure, as no single entity can tackle these threats alone. It also influenced later legislative efforts, such as the Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act of 2022, aimed at modernizing cybersecurity nationwide. This event was a pivotal moment, accelerating changes that had been discussed for years, but not yet fully implemented, and it underscored the need for proactive, rather than reactive, cybersecurity policies. Several critical lessons emerged from this attack. First, basic cyber hygiene matters more than ever and is non-negotiable. Strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, timely patch management, and regular audits of remote access systems like VPNs are simple yet powerful tools that many organizations still overlook. For example, enabling MFA on that single VPN account might have stopped the attack in its tracks. Second, watching for east-west traffic and network design matters. Segmenting internal networks by separating operational technology, like the systems controlling pipelines and valves, from IT systems, which handle email, databases, and files, are essential in limiting the spread of an intruder. A compromise on the business side shouldn't halt fuel distribution, yet Colonial's lack of segmentation allowed the attacks to spread. Third, organizations need to invest in preparedness through reliable backups, clearly defined policies around ransom decisions, and tabletop exercises, where teams simulate breaches to test their incident response plans. These drills help identify gaps and ensure rapid, coordinated action when seconds count. And finally, collaboration is key. This attack underscored that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. Private companies, government agencies, and even international partners must collaborate to share threat intelligence and respond effectively. No single organization can defend itself from today's cyber threats alone, and this incident highlighted the importance of building resilient systems through collective effort. Whether it's threat intelligence sharing, participation in information sharing and analysis centers, or working with CISA, collaboration builds resilience. Let's recap the key takeaways from today's presentation. 1. Critical infrastructure like fuel pipelines is now a major target for cybercriminals, especially when the attackers know that downtime will force a fast payout. The Colonial attack proved that pipelines, power grids, and water systems are all fair game in today's cyber landscape. 2. Security basics like strong passwords and MFA must be enforced. You don't need cutting-edge AI to stop most attacks. You need discipline, monitoring, and a culture of cyber awareness. 3. Defensive collaboration is essential. From federal agencies to private sector companies, everyone has a role in building a secure ecosystem. Public-private cooperation is not optional. It's essential for threat detection and coordinated response. Finally, policy is evolving. We are now seeing a rapid evolution in how both industry and government approach cybersecurity. We are entering a new era of compliance, enforcement, and responsibility for operators of critical infrastructure. This attack was a catalyst for overdue changes. Those who don't keep up will be left vulnerable. Thank you so much for your attention today. I hope this presentation gave you insight into the technical, economic, and policy-level impact of the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack. The Colonial Pipeline attack was more than just a one-off event. It was a watershed moment for national cybersecurity awareness. It exposed cracks in our systems, but also laid the foundation for reform.